Oh, hello friends. It's nice to see you. If you clicked on this video, it's probably because you saw the thumbnail that said Japan's MAGA movement. Now, I know it should technically say the Majuga movement, but Majuga kind of sounds like an off-brand Pokemon. Japan's MAGA movement is actually called Sanseito, and it's gaining popularity at a time when Japan is facing some pretty serious threats: a declining population, an aging workforce, and a stagnant economy. So Japan's far right has rallied around this saying, Japanese first, which is a direct riff off of Donald Trump's America first. But there's a distinct difference. It's not Japan first, the nation and all of its people. It's Japanese first, the ethnic identity. And that begs the question, who really counts as Japanese? The history of Japan contradicts the very story that Japan's far right is trying to sell. There has never been one single ethnic identity of Japan. So this is the story of a country that modernized at lightning speed while pushing its oldest cultures out to the edges. So let's dive into this painting, and I say dive in very intentionally because the Japanese equivalent of dive in is to jump off the stage at Kiyomizu, which is the temple that I'm painting. So the saying actually dates back to the 1600s. There was a tradition of jumping off of this, which was 42 feet up from the ground. And apparently, if you survived the jump, all of your wishes would be granted. So apparently about 250 jumps were recorded in the 16 and 1700s. And not surprisingly, the practice was banned in the 1800s. But I also like this image because it shows a sort of conflict between Japanese modernity and tradition. You have the modern city in the distance, and you've got this traditional temple right up front on the side here, and that's really at the heart of what we're going to be talking about. So long before Japan existed, about 14,000 years before Jesus and 7,000 years before the pyramids were built, small groups of hunter-gatherers followed herds of prehistoric animals across ice fields that once connected the eastern part of Asia to this archipelago of islands known today as Japan. So when the ice melted around 11,000 BC, these people became stranded on these islands, and today they're called the Jomon, and they are the first people to inhabit the Japanese islands. So for nearly 10,000 years, the Jomon lived on this abundant, humid, and fruitful land with very little outside contact. Then, around 400 BC, refugees fleeing tribal warfare along the Korean peninsula hopped in boats and they landed nearby in Japan. So these people brought with them iron tools, they brought rice farming, and they brought warfare experience. So these newcomers are known today as the Yayoi, and they are the ancestors of most Japanese people. So as they developed Japan into a land of tribes and villages, the Jomon were pushed outward. So they went north to Hokkaido, and they became the Ainu people. And they went south to Okinawa, becoming the Ryukyu. So I'm going to talk mainly about the Ainu people today because they are the largest indigenous group in Japan, although as we'll come to learn, centuries of forced assimilation and segregation mean that today there's only about 13,000 of them left in the world. By the Middle Ages, Japan had developed samurai and castles and feudal hierarchies, but none of that reached that island of Hokkaido where the Ainu lived. So to Japanese warlords, that area was just a distant frontier, a land of salmon and furs and trade. But to the Ainu, these Japanese people were basically just foreign merchants who were clustered in a few southern ports. So two very different civilizations living fairly close by, but not really blending. So I want to take a second to describe the Ainu culture, because if you are like me, you might not know that much about them. In Ainu society, men hunted and women were weavers and potters. Ainu women practiced anchipiri, mouth and hand tattoos that signified adulthood, beauty, and spiritual protection. So their religion saw the world as alive with kamui, which are spirits, basically powerful spirits that lived in mountains and rivers and animals, all things in the world. one of the most important traditions for the Ainu people was a practice of iomante. They would essentially raise a bear cub in their own village. They would care for it and treat it as one of their own. And when that bear cub reached adolescence and adulthood, they would sacrifice it. And they did this as a way of trying to send this bear to the spirit realm so that the bear could tell other spirits, other kamui, that this village took care of it. I thought that was such an interesting practice. So Japanese encroachment into southern Hokkaido began around 1200 AD when they started pushing into Ainu hunting grounds. And as is often the story, conflict followed. There were uprisings, and those uprisings by the Ainu people were squashed by Japanese feudal society. So by the 1600s, the Shogunate in Kyoto granted a northern Matsume clan the rights to control trade with the Ainu. Matsume officials controlled what kind of goods went in and out of Ainu territory, and they often flooded the territory with low-quality supplies in exchange for valuable furs and salmon and other resources. So by the 1700s, the imbalance was so severe that many Ainu villages were forced into economic dependence. Eventually, the Ainu population began to decline. Then came a similar story to what we've heard about all around the world, the forced assimilation. So in 1868, Japan went through a revolution that restored power to Emperor Meiji. So this was called the Meiji Restoration, and it ushered in a new era of modernity. It abolished the samurai system for one. It introduced a national railway system, compulsory education. It adopted Western science and industry. So as the government moved to unify Japan into this modern nation state, Hokkaido was officially annexed. The Ainu were stripped of land rights, and they were pushed into poor farming land. In 1899, the Japanese government passed a law that banned the practice of tattooing their mouths. It also banned that bear cub ceremony, and almost 90% of Ainu children were forcibly taken into Japanese language schools. By the 1950s, the Ainu language had collapsed to about 1,000 speakers, and today only about 200 remain. And that brings us to today. So despite generations of erasure, Ainu culture is actually seeing a resurgence in Japan. So for the first time in 2019, Japan's government passed an act that officially defines Ainu people as indigenous. So supporters of this act believe that it offers a lot of support for Ainu people. It loosens fishing regulations, it offers funding, and they even have a snazzy new Ainu museum in Hokkaido paid for by the government. But critics say that this is just a symbolic act. The law avoids defining the term indigenous, and it offers no land or political rights. Ainu communities still face worse economic prospects than other Japanese people. And a 2017 survey found that 30% of Ainu people had experienced discrimination for being Ainu. Many still hide their identity to try to avoid stigma. In fact, in 2004, a small group of Ainu people in Russia actually reached out to Vladimir Putin to see if he could define Japan's treatment of Ainu people in Japan as genocide. Putin obviously declined. But there is hope. Much of the modern Ainu revival comes from the work of a man named Kayano Shigeru, a fisherman's son who dedicated his life to preserving Ainu language, tradition, and culture. He also eventually became Japan's first ever Ainu member of Japanese government, and he's most famous for fighting the building of a dam that would have flooded a lot of Ainu farmland. I wrote all about him on my Patreon, and it's free, so if you'd like, I'll link it down below and you can go check it out. His story is incredible, and it's the kind of inspirational story that I feel like you don't really hear about unless you're really connected to that community. Speaking of Patreon, I have a Patreon where I share all kinds of stories like that. You can join, it's free if you'd like to join. You can also join as a paid member. If you join as a paid member, I always donate your subscription to charity. Thanks for watching. The Ainu story really challenges the myth of a pure and homogeneous Japan, and I feel like that's why this matters right now when there's this resurgence of populism fighting for a pure and ethnically homogeneous nation or national identity. So my goal in this video is just to point out that there is an identity in Japan. It's not the one that the Sanseito party is pushing, but they're the people that were actually there first. I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you next time on Painting the Past.